Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a huge question. Why do countries sometimes go to war and other times work together? Well, the answer, it really depends on the lens you're looking through. Let's get into it.
Have you ever looked at the news headlines and just wondered why? Why are there wars? Why do countries compete one day and cooperate the next? These are the fundamental puzzles that the field of international relations tries to solve.
So the key thing to get is that there's no single magic answer. Instead, think of the major theories as different pairs of glasses. Each one brings a different part of our super complex world into focus, showing you a totally unique picture of reality.
All right, our first lens is probably the most famous one, and honestly, the most grim. This is the lens of power, of conflict, and the constant struggle for survival. Welcome to the world of realism.
Realism kicks off with a simple, pretty harsh premise, inspired by the philosopher Hobbes. It says the international system is anarchic. Now, that doesn't mean chaotic, like riots in the streets. It means there's no world government, no global 911 you can call for help. In this state of nature, every country is on its own. They're forced to seek power just to make sure they survive. For them, security isn't just an interest, it's the interest.
And this classic quote from Hans Morgenthau, a giant in realist thought, really gets straight to the point. For realists, it doesn't matter what a country's ultimate goal is, whether it's wealth, prestige, or even peace. The first, most necessary step is always gaining more power. Everything else has to come second.
You see, for a realist, power isn't some abstract idea. It's tangible. You can measure it. Think about military spending. See that number? 39%. That's the share of the entire world's military spending that comes from the United States alone. To a realist, a number like that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about who holds the cards on the world stage.
But what if the world isn't just one big, constant struggle? Let's switch lenses. Our second perspective is way more optimistic. It focuses on the potential for cooperation and the role of shared institutions. Let's talk about liberalism.
So drawing inspiration from the philosopher Immanuel Kant, liberalism argues that, yeah, anarchy is a fact of life, but it's not a death sentence. Liberals believe that countries can actually build a more peaceful world. How? Well, by creating international institutions like the UN, by building economic ties that make war just too expensive, and by spreading democracy.
To really get this, we need to look at a key concept called complex interdependence. The whole idea here is that the realist view is just too simple. For one thing, it's not just governments talking to each other. Our societies are all connected through countless channels. Second, military security isn't always the top priority. And finally, in this interconnected world, using military force is often like using a sledgehammer to perform surgery. It's clumsy, costly, and usually makes things worse.
Okay, let's put these two heavyweights side by side. You can see the clash immediately, right? Realism sees a world of states, conflict, and military might. But liberalism zooms out to show a world with way more actors, more potential for cooperation, and a focus on prosperity through institutions. We're talking about two fundamentally different views of the exact same world.
So, we've got power on one hand and cooperation on the other. But our third lens, this one challenges the very foundation of the first two. It argues that the world is shaped not just by material things, but by the ideas we hold and the identities we share. This is constructivism.
Just think about this for a second. What if power isn't a physical thing at all, but an idea that we all agree on? I mean, what gives a piece of paper its value as money? Or what makes a weapon threatening? Constructivists would say it's our shared beliefs about them, and they apply this exact same logic to global politics.
So here's the main takeaway. For constructivists, reality itself is socially constructed. A country's interests aren't just a given, they're shaped by its identity and its relationships. The famous constructivist Alexander Wendt put it perfectly when he said, "Anarchy is what states make of it." It could be a brutal realist world or a cooperative liberal one. It all depends on the ideas that take hold.
And this has huge implications, because if our ideas and identities shape our reality, then they must also shape what we even mean by the word security.
The traditional view, the realist one, is all about state security, protecting your borders from a military attack. But the constructivist lens helps us see a much broader concept, human security. Here, the focus shifts from the state to the individual. Security suddenly means being free from fear and free from want.
And this isn't just some abstract theory. Back in 1994, the UN actually turned this into policy, defining human security across these 7 dimensions you see here. It's no longer just about armies and borders. It's about having food, a healthy environment, and personal safety. It's a radical rethinking of what it even means to be secure.
Okay, so far, the theories we've looked at were mostly born in Europe and North America. But do they work the same way everywhere else? To figure that out, we've got to shift our perspective and see how these ideas are adapted and even challenged from the global south, specifically from Latin America. The Argentine scholar Carlos Escudé came up with this fascinating adaptation called peripheral realism. He argued that for weaker or peripheral states, the typical realist obsession with maximizing power just doesn't make sense. Instead, their foreign policy should be a tool that serves the well-being of their own citizens, focusing on development and autonomy rather than playing a power game they're bound to lose. And we can actually see this in practice. Argentina's own national defense policy directives emphasize a regional zone of peace, and they formally renounce the use of force to settle disputes. The focus is squarely on diplomacy, regional cooperation, and tackling shared threats like pandemics or natural disasters. It's a real-world example of a policy that puts cooperation and human well-being ahead of traditional power politics.
So, we've looked at the world through 3 very different lenses. What's the takeaway here?
Well, let's build your analytical toolbox.
Here's the most important thing to remember. No single theory explains everything. Each one shines a light on a vital piece of the puzzle. Realism shows us the harsh realities of power. Liberalism highlights the possibilities for cooperation, and constructivism reveals the power of our shared ideas. The real skill isn't picking one favorite lens, but knowing how to use all of them to get a richer, more critical view of the world.
And that's our explainer for today. We've given you the tools. So tomorrow, when you're reading a news story about a trade deal, a conflict, or a climate summit, think about these lenses. Which one helps you make sense of it all? The answer might just surprise you.